It's Jonathan Ray here. I mentioned just before 7:30, do you get fed up with seeing adverts and billboards on every street corner? There is a conference that could be for you today. It's the UK's first ever anti-advertising conference. It's being held at the Trinity Centre in Bristol. It's been organised by the group Adblock Bristol, who want to end outdoor advertising, like the big new screen that's been installed by the side of the M32. Rob Gillett is from Adblock Bristol. Good morning. Thanks for coming into BBC Radio Bristol on a wet Saturday morning.
No problem at all. Good morning.
I know that you've got a busy day ahead of you. Just to point out to people who are not quite sure, what are you about Adblock? Why are you so against advertising?
So Adblock Bristol want to see an end to outdoor advertising because we think it undermines our mental health, our well-being, and our environment. A lot of the products that we see advertised on billboards, like junk food, new cars, fast fashion, we say, actually, we don't really need to be seeing adverts for a lot of these things. And actually, a lot of those products are actively harming us. And we don't need these billboards in our public spaces because they change and sort of denigrate our neighbourhoods and where we live.
I suppose that's something that's quite subjective. You say, you think Adblock, you think it's bad, this advertising. I mean, do you have any kind of evidence? Is there anything academic or anything to back up your claim?
So, in the top 10 companies using outdoor advertising, we see McDonald's, KFC, Coca-Cola. So, taking those companies, some people call those junk food companies. Bristol has growing concerns about public health, obesity, child obesity. London also has these concerns, and the Mayor of London banned junk food advertising on Transport for London property. So there is evidence and policies out there from different examples around the world of how advertising negatively affects us.
Okay, so you're suggesting that those sort of adverts and those sorts of companies contradict maybe health policy, for example. But of course, we do live in a free economy, don't we? Really, I mean, that's part of the part of the life we've brought up with. I mean, I was brought up with billboards. So are you, surely. So it's part of the economy that we live in, the world we live in.
I mean, it's
consumer-led.
Yeah, it's a big part of consumerism, billboard advertising generally. And yes, we've all seen billboards growing up in the places where we were, but we were saying actually they weren't particularly welcome feature of our landscape often. But people say to us often, I don't really see the adverts, I don't notice them. And our argument is that advertising affects you at a subconscious level. There's very creative, talented people working in ad agencies attaching strong emotional meanings to different brands to get into the back of our subconscious. And so advertising affects us and it changes our priorities, our aspirations, what we think of as the good life. And that's why we want to get rid of these adverts so we can create space for the things that really matter.
It's interesting what you mentioned, some big companies there who would probably deny some of the things you've claimed, but they sponsor big events, like things like the World Cup, for example. So, it's everywhere. You can't escape it.
It is everywhere, and it's really annoying, actually. Sometimes I know people that go to sports matches, and I had Newcastle United fans complaining about this. They walk into their stadium and they're like, this has just turned into a big advert, a big billboard. I've paid to be here and I'm already being branded at. And it's a particular feature of the English economy, of sort of Anglo-Saxon capitalism, where we see advertising and branding and sort of consumer messages everywhere. And actually it doesn't have to be like that. We can transition to a different type of economy if we choose to.
It's a fair point, but it isn't. You mentioned football fans. I mean, I think it's quite common in a lot of football clubs, not just Newcastle United, but I take your point. But of course, they're there. They choose to go there. They don't have to go there and be subjected to the advertising. I mean, they don't have to be there.
Whereas when you walk down the street in your local neighbourhood, you need to be there to take your kids to school, to buy your groceries, and you don't get a choice as to whether you're exposed to those billboards on the street or that big bright new screen that might be put up in your area. There's no consent when you're whether you're subjected to outdoor advertising. Whereas,
just one as well. You're talking about things like bus stops as well, because they're not big billboards, are they? At bus stops, they're smaller. Are you campaigning against those as well?
Well, so the new bus stops, we're against all outdoor advertising because actually those advert spaces don't make space for typically like volunteer groups in our community, or where are the spaces for civil society messages. Now the new bus stops, they're quite energy. A lot of them are electric. We've got digital displays.
Certainly the Metrobus ones are.
Yeah, and one of those double-sided screens takes the same amount of energy as the 4 average UK homes. So whilst lots of people are trying to reduce their carbon footprint because they're worried about climate change, advertising companies are trying to fill the city with more and more energy-intensive screens, and Bristol's declared a climate emergency. Everyone's trying to reduce their carbon footprint. Maybe the advertising industry needs to not put up these energy-guzzling screens.
It's quite an interesting discussion because, I'm quite fascinated by the things you've said, but I'm also thinking that surely the selling the advertising to these big companies with these big billboards, as you put them, it raises revenue for the city. If you get rid of that, there's a loss in revenue. Council tax goes up.
So where the money goes for advertising, and a lot of it just goes as profit to the advertisers. They charge huge amounts, but some money goes to local landowners, private landowners. They actually get quite a small amount relatively to the amounts of money involved. Yes, Bristol City Council gets some money in business rates. And maybe from land it rents out to some billboards, but I think most of them are on private land, so that money goes to private landlords. Our argument is that the social costs of the advertising outweigh the financial benefits. So the cost of junk food, the cost of air pollution from seeing lots of car adverts and having that normalised as part of our lives, all these, and or bigger costs of climate change, which aren't picked up by anyone at the moment except communities in the global south. What about those costs that aren't measured on the public spreadsheets?
So you've got your first conference today. So how long has this been in the making, and what's happening?
Today is the UK's first anti-advertising conference. We've got around 200 people registered to come from all across the country. We've got a video message from the Mayor of Grenoble.
This is the important point, because Grenoble has gone ad-free.
That's right. People say to us, well, you want to see an ad-free city? It can't be done. Well, actually, Grenoble has massively reduced the amount of advertising it has in its city, Grenoble, in France, and the Mayor of Grenoble has sent a message of good luck and an address to the conference. We've also got campaigners from France to share their experience.
How long did their campaign take? Do you know?
Well, actually, that's what we're going to find out in today's workshop at 10 a.m. till 6 p.m. at the Trinity Centre today. It's free to attend. We've got other workshops on climate change in advertising, body image and gender representations in advertising, a panel debate thinking how we can create a happier, healthier city, and what could we replace the adverts with public art, with rewilded green spaces.
The reason why I asked about how long their campaign took is because, this is still very much a new sort of initiative, isn't it, from your point of view, and it's your first conference. I'm just wondering how long it could take it to get to your aim where you could see Bristol being completely ad-free.
Well, who knows? In Bristol, I think we need to build this public conversation about advertising and kind of revisibilise or make advertising conscious again. If I'm saying it affects us at an unconscious level, we need to have this public debate. So it took the networks in France have been going for over 20 years. They have a very developed anti-advertising movement there. The network in Grenoble, I'm not quite sure how long. Imagine it took 3-4 years to get these changes implemented. So we've just got going in Bristol. We've been around for 2 years. We've stopped 20 of these big digital screens in the last 2 years. The two that went up on the M32 recently, big eyesores that they got planning permission back in 2015. So if we don't organise to object to these new screens, then we'll be subjected to more.
Now, I know that you've got to go down to the conference. It starts at 10 at the Trinity Centre. So I know you've got to get on your bike and get there. And make sure you finish your coffee first as well, because that's a good strong cup of coffee. You'll need that for the rest of the day.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Rob, thanks for coming into BBC Radio Bristol this morning.
Thanks very much.
Lovely. Rob Gillett from Adblock Bristol.
BBC Radio Bristol.
This afternoon, we